Thank you. Thank you all. Every year this seems to get to be a bigger crowd, and I tell you, it's really, really great to see you all here today. I want to thank Ed for that kind introduction. Ed and I have been friends for a very long time. Not just friends, he's a mentor of mine. And in fact, was one of the very first individuals that I consulted when I decided to get into public service. And he, as you can imagine, has provided me much wise counsel and advice over the years. And that is a gift worth gold, frankly, to have a friend like that. So, Ed, thank you for that, but thank you also for what Paige Scranton does for this city and this community. I greatly appreciate that. I want to recognize my family. I have my husband, of course, Tripp, whom all of you all know, and you also know that I couldn't do this, wouldn't be up here today without him. And so I'm so glad he was able to take a break from the law practice and come and be with us today. My mom and dad, Diane and Bob Pike, are down from Atlanta to be with us today because they love Columbus. This is their second home, and so they also have a keen interest in knowing about this city. I had a surprise today when I walked in to see my former law partners here. Now, it's one thing when you're law partners and you know you got to schlep yourself around to these various things that your partners have committed themselves to. But to have my law partners drive down from Atlanta and of course here in Columbus, to hear about this city, I got to tell you, it means the world to me. And I appreciate you guys being here. It truly does mean the world to me. It is my great pleasure, of course, to be here with you once again to discuss my favorite subject, which is the great city of Columbus, Georgia. I want to thank the Chamber. Brian, thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to come together in order to share thoughts on our accomplishments, our remaining challenges, and our possibilities. At the outset, I want to thank our friends at the Fort Benning Maneuver Center of Excellence for being in attendance today and for working with us hand in hand with preserving and expanding this tremendous military resource for our country, but also what is a tremendous economic driver for our region. We also thank you, Colonel Donahoe, for joining us on the T-League fields, in our schools, in our church pews, and at our community events. You are our friends and neighbors as well as our heroes, and so we truly appreciate your presence here today. Likewise, it's good to see our business leaders, our young professionals, our education leaders, and faith-based community out in force to hear this special update. We thank you for your engagement and vision. We are dependent on you to help lead us to the next big thing for this city. I want to recognize the elected and appointed officials who dutifully serve our community, including my colleagues on the Columbus Council. We have with us today our Mayor Pro Tem, Evelyn Turner Pugh, Councilor Pops Barnes, Councilor Skip Henderson, Councilor Mike Baker, and also Councilor Glenn Davis were able to be here with us today. They make the tough decisions that allow us to move forward, and it's my honor and privilege to work with them. I also, of course, want to recognize our executive management team, including our esteemed city manager, Mr. Isaiah Hughley, our city attorney, Mr. Clifton Fay, assistant city attorney, Lucy Sheftel, our deputy city managers, Pam Hodge and Lisa Goodwin, our department heads, and my office staff. They lead a mighty force of nearly 3,000 consolidated government employees who get up each day committed to working for you so that you need not worry about the civic infrastructure that enables your day and your life. We have a remarkable team, and it's my honor and privilege to serve alongside of them. In fact, I want to share with you something that the media did not fully report. At 7:45 a.m. on Christmas morning, our city manager and our emergency management team, to include Pat Beegler of Public Works, Sandra Hunter of Metra, Deputy City Manager Lisa Goodwin, Riley Land, who heads our emergency management team, Robert Futrell of Homeland Security, J.D. Hawk of the Columbus Police Department, Mike Burgess and Donna Newman of our engineering department, our partners at Georgia Power, and others gathered for a meeting on the severe flooding we were experiencing that morning and that was expected to grow worse. The possibility that we would evacuate hundreds of homes in Oakland Park on Christmas morning was discussed. But because of the expertise of our employees and partners, the city knew precisely where the water would go and how it would likely affect our community. Accordingly, we had the luxury of monitoring the situation while allowing our employees, or our citizens, to enjoy their Christmas morning unencumbered by the disruption and worry of evacuation. None of the team members returned home prior to 11 a.m. on Christmas morning, and for most it was much later than that. So today, for all those public servants who show up and dutifully yet silently serve us and protect us and our property, even on Christmas morning, let's give them a well-deserved round of applause. This year, I want to talk to you a bit about miracles. 2015 was a year when my faith in miracles was reaffirmed. It wasn't just one, it was several. I think the evidence of these miracles teaches us anew that great things are possible, that even seemingly insurmountable challenges can be overcome. On a personal note, as Ed alluded to, many of you are aware that my undergraduate alma mater, Sweetbriar College, was shockingly announced in March of 2015 to be closing due to proclaimed negative financial and enrollment trends. Yet thousands of alumni from around the world marshaled an incredible response to this so-called done deal. We raised $28.5 million in 110 days. We converted $14 million of that to cash in 70 days. We went to the Virginia Supreme Court on expedited appeal and won. We engaged the Virginia Attorney General and reached a settlement that required the college stay open, the old board and president resign, and new leadership be installed. In 4 months' time, from the doomsday announcement that was etched in stone, the college was back in business, opening in the fall on time, and is now poised to welcome one of the largest freshman classes in the college's history. There isn't an odds maker in Las Vegas that would have given you 2 bits for that occurring, any of it, much less all of it. And yet it did happen. Contrary to the critics and the pundits and the higher education experts, this remarkable, improbable story unfolded in real life. I recount for you this seemingly irrelevant matter because I want you to appreciate that a force of people of goodwill can come together to do the impossible. If thousands of women, disconnected by geography, age, and life circumstance, can band together to pull off such a feat in an incredibly short period of time, what can we, as a Columbus, Georgia community, do if we come together to tackle the improbable? Well, I will tell you what we can do when we come together. We can cure homelessness. Now, do not laugh or roll your eyes, because we already have, in part. The first step in this miraculous occurrence is that city leaders came together several years ago to launch a 10-year plan to end homelessness. Then our philanthropic leaders and Columbus Council thought enough of the possibility to invest in its success. The United Way agreed to house the spearheading organization called Home for Good, and a tremendous board and group of community stakeholders were brought together devoted to the implementation of the 10-year plan. Then another miracle occurred. Columbus became one of just 70 cities chosen nationwide to participate in the transformative Zero 2016 campaign to end homelessness by permanently housing those that experience homelessness and by providing the supportive services those individuals and families need to stay housed and safe. Long thought to be a challenge with no solution, Columbus, Georgia, through the Zero 2016 campaign, the Housing First strategy, and our community partners, has changed the course of homelessness. by permanently housing 86 homeless veterans in just 1 year. We have reached the goal of functional zero for our homeless veteran population, meaning Columbus has either housed all of its homeless veterans or has the capacity and services to do so. We additionally have housed 55 chronically homeless non-veterans in the Zero 2016 campaign and are on our way to meeting our second goal of functional zero for the chronically homeless, who largely make up the encampments around town, by the end of 2016. We also have achieved the successful coordination of local homeless feeding ministries, thanks in large part to service providers and faith-based ministries, so that we can transition to a community, or from a community that is merely sustaining those who are experiencing homelessness, to a systemized collaboration that builds relationships, connects people with services, and provides immediate permanent housing for those in need. Few cities have accomplished such collaboration, and yet here we are in the forefront of cities nationally. Folks, that's a miracle. And it reflects the Columbus, Georgia spirit, ingenuity, and teamwork that tells me anything is possible in this city. Much like addressing homelessness, people have assumed for decades or more that poverty is to be tolerated and isolated. There's been little hope of meaningfully addressing poverty on a broad scale. The truth is that addressing poverty on a broad scale is, in large part, a macroeconomic challenge. On a local level, most assume that addressing poverty requires social, programmatic, or faith-based solutions. But the hard truth is that if there is not a broad civic, economic, and physical infrastructure in which the effect of those programs can take root, you are talking about the arduous task of lifting people out of poverty one person at a time. When we talk about crime in Columbus, we need to understand that we have made law enforcement improvements through the generosity of our taxpayers' lost proceeds. And those law enforcement improvements have borne fruit. We have had some of the lowest crime rates in the last 5 years that we have had in 15 years. And yet, crime is still too high. So we have to take our fight to the next level. We have to hit crime where it is coming from, and it is largely coming from areas of economic distress and community disintegration. Areas, large areas, plagued by poverty and disinvestment. Can we, in this extraordinary Columbus, Georgia community, change the narrative and seek to reverse poverty, or at least stem its tide? You bet we can. I suggest, as do others, that cities can build communities where people and the private sector can prosper, and where nonprofit and faith-based organizations can meaningfully till the field to reverse the effects of poverty. As you have heard me say many times, if we are to be a prosperous city, we simply cannot have large areas of disinvestment where businesses and families that can leave do. We have to bring economically diverse populations back to areas previously left behind. And this will not happen overnight. We literally are tasked with recreating the structure needed for neighborhood economies. We took a major step in doing this in 2014 when, after one failed attempt, we adopted the powerful tool of redevelopment districts. We could have accepted the prior failure to pass redevelopment districts powers in 2007 and given up on the prosperity tool. But instead, we came together and would not allow this opportunity to pass us by. And in December 2015, the Columbus Council approved the Benning Tech Park Redevelopment District, the county's first such district under its new Redevelopment Powers Authority. This 1,232-acre district is expected to bring 1,800 jobs and $118 million in capital investment to a previously underdeveloped land mass in our blighted area of our community, and to add $47.5 million in ad valorem value to our digest at full build-out. This type of investment is a game changer for South Columbus and for the city as a whole. And the momentum to reverse blight and poverty does not look like it will stop there. Council has said it will take up consideration of 3 other prospective redevelopment districts in the new year, which districts include the proposed City Village 2nd Avenue District, once part of the community's highest violent crime area, the long, languishing Liberty 6th Avenue District, and the Uptown District, all with a combined potential of adding hundreds of millions of dollars in community building, job creation, and capital investment to areas which are currently underutilized. These efforts could fundamentally shift the growth that has been flowing out of Columbus back into the geographic heart of our city. And that will be instrumental in helping us to bring economic diversity to areas of blight, and it will aid us in combating the economic and social effects of concentrated poverty. We are putting other pieces of the prosperity puzzle together too. In 2015, our Columbus Council approved a long-awaited revision of our Metro public bus lines in order to meet the city's present-day needs. We added third-shift bus service for those dependent on the bus to get to and from work, and expanded our dial-a-ride services for those with disabilities. This was made possible by the generosity of our citizens through a $22.4 million in T-SPLOST funds. We intend to take this investment further into the future as the generations coming up are demanding a public transit system of choice, not just of necessity. Cities that intend to be competitive in the future will need to have transit systems that are not defined by economic stigma, but will have transit systems defined by the ease and reliability of travel and the enjoyment of experience. That is the goal here in Columbus, to have a public transportation system so accessible, so reliable, and so desirable that someone with options in life will choose to leave the car in the garage in order to enjoy the experience of an excellent public transportation system. And frankly, that is the same exceptional transit system to which our citizens in need are entitled. We have done what some say could not have been done. We have shaken the myths of the past that lost us the opportunity of the redevelopment districts the first time around in 2007. We have begun to bridge the divides created by economic stigma and separation. By bringing people of community goodwill, faith, and vision together, we have launched transformative efforts to be a better city. So don't tell me we can't do big, difficult, seemingly impossible things in Columbus, Georgia. Look how far we have come, even while sometimes fighting the headwinds of the cynics and the overly skeptical. Had you told me when I got into this mayor's business that I would be part of a team shepherding the city through some of the most austere times our region has ever seen, I would have probably believed you. Because by the winter of 2010, we were well into the Great Recession. If, however, you would have told me that 5 years later, we would be dealing with the same economic stagnation and flat revenues, I don't know that I would have believed that. I have to commend our executive management staff, though, for literally meeting me at the door on my way into office with a list of systemic issues in dire need of change, and our Columbus Council, who have been willing to adopt these proposed changes. One by one, we have addressed systemic issues, almost uniformly reversed them to great positive effect. Such progress has been made in getting our house in order. We have largely reformed our budget, attempting to squeeze every bit of inefficiency and duplicative services from our local government system and structure. Most recently, we have dramatically reduced the cost of our county jail system through an innovative effort led by Superior Court Judge Gil McBride, community officials and county officials and community partners. The dilemma of jail overcrowding and its cost dogs many communities. But in Muskogee County, officials and community stakeholders have persevered through a recent solution called the Rapid Resolution Initiative, which in just 5 months has resulted in a 12% decrease in the jail pending felony population, a 5% decrease in the overall jail population, the closing of one wing of our jail, a $514,000 decrease in direct jail cost, and over $100,000 in savings in indirect cost, such as medical expenses. Also, in 2015, we began the arduous process of reforming police pay through the Police Longevity and Retention Pay Plan in order to address pay compression problems that have developed over the years, and we did so using largely existing funds. After years of community debate, we have implemented 1 day a week household garbage pickup, right-sizing our waste management service, and deferring $450,000 in additional annual cost while increasing recycling, which saves us millions of dollars by increasing the longevity of our existing landfill. We have moved these mountains in addition to other fiscally responsible steps we have needed to take in order to meet the flat revenues of this era. Our other successes are by now well known. Our pension reform has saved taxpayers $3.6 million. Our employee health care reform has saved taxpayers $9 million so far. The renegotiation of our medical center contract has saved $337,000 in its first year. The reform of our workers' compensation program has saved $400,000 in administrative costs, has reduced claims costs by 60%, and has reduced days out of work by 75%. The reduction in city subsidies to third-party affiliates has saved us $876,000. The reduction of personnel cost has saved us $1.34 million through the defunding of unfilled positions. And the long overdue increases in user fees has saved us $2.5 million in additional drawdown of our general fund reserve. Just these few itemized efforts have saved taxpayers $15.5 million over the last few years and have reduced the negative impact to our general fund reserve by some $18 million. Getting serious fiscal policy passed and implemented is like pushing rope, and I don't care what jurisdiction you are in. So know that this is real progress we have made. And in a nation and in an era where political solution making is rare to non-existent, we can say that the progress we have made here in Columbus over these last several years is indeed miraculous. As we talk about the amazing things we have accomplished together, we cannot overlook the tremendous quality of life enhancements that have been made in just the last year. Though some who are uninformed laugh at the suggestion that quality of life is an economic concept, know that quality of life is an essential counterbalance to responsible fiscal policy, particularly in times of stagnation and austerity. Respected economists, investors, and civic leaders will tell you that if your community is solely focused on austerity without investment in responsible quality of life projects, your community is one thing and one thing only: dying. In these difficult financial times, it is essential that we do what we can to continue to invest in the infrastructure and vibrancy we need to be a competitive city in the future. So we partner and compete for grants and study best practices to become more agile in finding strategies to leverage our resources so that quality of life improvements can be made. For instance, in 2015, Columbus was one of 9 cities out of 538 cities in the state of Georgia to be named a bronze-level bike-friendly city by the League of American Bicyclists, while the Columbus Civic Center was named the state's largest silver-level bike-friendly business. It takes cities many years to garner this recognition, but Columbus achieved this status just months after declaring that we were determined to be the state's first silver-level bike-friendly city. This could not have been done without our friends at the River Valley Regional Commission, our CCG Planning Department, private individual leaders, and local cycling enthusiasts who have been working hard to connect our existing trails, install protected bike lanes, and commence public education efforts so that we can be a best practices city. We now are on our way to becoming the state's first silver-level bike-friendly city and joining the ranks of Denver, Colorado, and other desirable cities in this important quality of life criterion. Bolstering our goal to be the state's first silver-level city is the grant funding Columbus stakeholders obtained through the highly competitive Knight Foundation Civic Challenge, which funding will be used to design a cycling and pedestrian grid that will connect the uptown area with Midtown Columbus. We have initiated other civic relationships with the Path Foundation to enhance cycling and pedestrian trails throughout the city, so that cycling and walking are not just modes of exercise or recreation, but are modes of transportation. As the millennials come of age and begin to dominate the workforce, we must remember that they will set the parameters of what defines a competitive city. And the millennials are insisting on transportation options that prior generations never considered feasible or even desirable. The fact that we have come this far in the cycling and alternative transportation world in a relatively short period of time with very little financial outlay shows our city's capability to accomplish big things, even in trying times. Despite these tremendous successes, Columbus, Georgia continues to fight certain structural limitations that hold our city back and keep us from the prosperity we would otherwise be capable of achieving. Based on the remarkable history of this community and our recent record of success, I know we can address and change these issues too. It is time to address the remaining elephant in the room. And as you might have guessed, I will use this opportunity and the privilege of the microphone today to do just that. Our remaining unaddressed structural challenge is the property tax freeze. A related challenge will be the potential fear and skepticism that will keep us from addressing it. Recently, our reinvigorated Chamber of Commerce has launched a regional prosperity initiative to assess our community's competitiveness for jobs and workforce talent, and to tackle issues related to poverty, which affect school performance, crime, and economic development. What that assessment has found is at the same time sobering and yet hopeful. First, the sobering news. Know that our Columbus region has had net zero job growth over the last 30 years or so. And now that's despite BRAC, AFLAC, TSYS, the Bradley Company, Carmike, Synovus, NCR, Pratt Whitney, and other economic engines. We have been outpaced by almost every city of comparable size in a 6-state region to include Augusta, Rome, Savannah, Huntsville, and Fayetteville, North Carolina. We finished 58th out of 61 metro areas in 6 states, falling behind all but Albany, Anniston, and Gadsden. We have had de minimis positive immigration or population growth over the last 3 decades, which is contrary to the explosive growth that has been experienced throughout this 6-state southeastern comparative. Now, this is shocking on the one hand because we can all recite chapter and verse on the individual acts of greatness we have achieved together in Columbus. Whitewater, Columbus State University, the Riverwalk, the revitalization of Uptown, Midtown, BRAC, hundreds of millions of dollars of investment in South Columbus, just to name a few. On the other hand, this long-term economic stagnation should not be a surprise to us at all. We were forewarned. First, decades ago, we allowed fear and isolationism to keep us from what others of the day knew. Joining the U.S. interstate and highway system would be a long-term infrastructure boon for our economy. We, however, chose the status quo, and the economic opportunities passed us by for decades, and they continue to do so. The growth we have had in Columbus has been in spite of this mistake, and we need to recognize our failure to join the U.S. interstate system as a mistake rooted in fear and unhealthy skepticism. The type of mistake we shall vow never to make again. When you add to the revelation of our net zero job growth and our negligible population growth the fact that we have been significantly outpaced by like communities in a 6-state region that also have no U.S. interstate access, we have to stop and admit a hard reality to ourselves. The property tax freeze has hurt us, just as the 20% that voted against it the first time out had predicted, just as studies of similar tax freezes show that they do. Our stagnation has been precisely those negative impacts predicted and proven in other jurisdictions. We have incentivized immobility, meaning people stay in one home longer than they normally would, though their life circumstance may dictate another housing choice. We have strangled our local government by not allowing revenues to keep pace with the cost and demand for services. We have discouraged newcomers and upward mobility, as those who would buy homes in Muskogee County understand that the freeze means they will carry a disproportionate burden of property tax cost for at least 14 years. This causes new talent and regional immigration to live beyond our county borders and causes those of means who wish to buy a new home to do so as well, leaving behind lower income families that have no capacity to move. On average, those leaving Muskogee County for surrounding areas earn $2,500 more per household than those who stay. I'm sorry, but no legitimate claim can be made that our property tax freeze is anything but detrimental to this community. Now, are there families that it benefits? Well, you bet there are. Just under 25% of the families are benefited because they have owned their home for 14 years or more, and they are on the positive side of the freeze. The other 75% subsidize the 25% with starkly higher and disproportionate property taxes. As fewer families stay in one home for longer than 14 years, Muskogee County will become increasingly uncompetitive for population influx and workforce talent. We now know this. Our old way of doing things must be discarded, and we must find new ways to thrive. We can no longer cater to the loud, emphatic voices calling for bad, injurious policy, no matter how adamant they are, and no matter how respected they otherwise may be. We are at a crossroads. Each one of you will need to help us in this choice of new policy for a new era. A new policy that will allow us to reap the benefit of our investment and our potential. When we were kids, positive peer pressure stopped us from eating the sand in the sandbox. Now, as adults and community leaders, positive peer pressure must be asserted to stop the myths and the fear that has allowed this flawed system to stay in place all these years and caused this damage to our community and our future. It is time to educate ourselves by going to thawthefreeze.com or by going to one of the many community forums on the subject in order to be prepared to look your in-laws, your golfing buddies, your co-workers, your Sunday school classmates, your neighbors in the eye and say, no, sir. We can no longer have this tax system. We can no longer hurt ourselves and stymie our growth. The Thaw the Freeze proposal inflicts no harm. If you have the freeze, you stay in the freeze system. It will be retired and no one else can enter it. All new property transfers will vest in a fair market valuation system, just like the majority of systems in this state and around the country, but with an increased tax break in the form of a $20,000 homestead exemption. We cannot allow those who, for pride of authorship of the original freeze proposal, or for sake of extreme ideology, or for political sport, will attempt to thwart this opportunity for us to get it right and stop the decades-long injury the current system has inflicted on us. In 2015, we received the miracle of broad, though not unanimous, support from the city government, the school board, and the Chamber of Commerce to place the Thaw the Freeze proposal on the November 8th, 2016 general election ballot. That constitutes a miracle because I was assured that would not happen, and a handful of folks pledged to me that I could count that attempt dead in the water. That fear-laced prognostication fell victim to those who want a chance to test the voters' appetite for a better system. Now the issue rests in the hands of our esteemed state delegation, nearly all of whom support putting the issue on the ballot so that citizens can decide for themselves the tax system that will govern their future. You are hereby deputized to go forth armed with facts and figures and a conviction that we will not repeat the mistakes of the past. I ask that you contact each member of the state delegation and let them know you desire that this issue be on the ballot for the citizens to decide. When they do vote to place it on the ballot, I ask that you join us in any and every way you can in advocating for the passage of the ballot initiative to sunset our property tax freeze. Do not tell me we cannot do this because it's too hard or too controversial. Just look at what we have accomplished thus far. Just look at the mountains that people of goodwill and commitment have proven we are capable of moving. And I will tell you this, after 5 years of forums and meetings and debates and other community discussions on this topic, the people are ready for this change. The Thaw the Freeze proposal is poised to pass. Join us to make certain that it does. Yes, in Columbus, Georgia, we are in the miracle business. It's what makes us great and sustains our hope for the next big challenge. Just like the alumni of Sweetbriar College that accomplished the unimaginable to change a predestined course, our Columbus leadership and citizens have raised $100 million in the Columbus Challenge, blew a dammed-up river back to its natural course, revived a lifeless downtown, elevated a community college to a prestigious affiliate of our state university system, resolved veterans' homelessness by reaching our functional zero, started the process of reversing blight and poverty, got our fiscal house in order while largely maintaining demanded city services, and placed our city on a new quality of life plateau. We have borne witness to civic miracles. Because of our faith that the seemingly impossible is possible, we will find a way forward. We will not tolerate mischief and myth-based naysaying to derail our opportunities to change to a more productive course. We each will pick up the mantle and take responsibility for putting our community's future on solid, more fertile ground. Yes, the state of our city is strong, but with your help, it will be stronger yet. Thank you so very much.